world where tone controls have practically gone extinct, it's nice to see that Douk Audio has brought this into the market. The Douk Audio T8, which is a tone control. It has tubes, it works as a preamplifier and as a headphone and earphone amplifier as well. But before I continue on with the review, thank you to a good friend and supporter of the channel, Vinod, for letting me borrow your T8 for this review. Without you, this review would not have been possible. So let's jump straight in with how the T8 is built. Douk Audio has kept the T8's unboxing quite simple. Everything you need is in the box, from the literature, the T8, power brick and two 6H3N tubes. The T8 comes in a metal body and on the front of it has a toggle switch which switches on when you flip it over to channel 1 and channel 2. It has a 3.5mm headphone out followed by a 5-band tone control which lets you tweak 64Hz, 256Hz, 1kHz, 4kHz and 16kHz. And to its right, you get a balance adjustment knob and a volume control knob as well. All of these knobs have a knurled finish, so it's quite easy to grip and tweak. And it's nice that they lock into a centered position so you know you're at a neutral 0 dB gain. A few of them aren't exactly centered at the 12 o'clock position, which can be a bit annoying. All the knobs have a center soft click except the volume knob, which has tiny steps in its feedback whenever you interact with it. Moving on to the back of the T8, your power inlet is here and you get two channel inputs. You can either use the XLR balanced input or an RCA one, and you get the outputs for these over here. The bottom of the unit has nice grippy rubber feet, so shouldn't slide around if a cable gets tugged. And of course on the top is where you plug your tubes in. Something new a lot of manufacturers that include pre-tubes with the equipment do is they place an orange LED light around or near the tube to give it more of a glow. You really need a power tube to give you something that looks like this, but I guess this adds a bit of fun to this unit. After all, a tube does take a few seconds to warm up and form a glow. On a sound front, I've used this as a preamp and plugged it into the Forzy Audio TB10D. And it has brought a lot more warmth and fun into the way this amp sounds. After plugging it into the Forzy Audio as a preamp, it did sound a lot more fun, especially after I started driving the LS50s. This doesn't have a passive pass-through, so you'll have to have it on and bump up the volume knob to around the 3 o'clock position to get a good signal out. Any higher than that and it may start to distort. If you're into tube sound, these little 6H3N stock tubes do pretty well, which I wasn't expecting out of supplied tubes. I usually swap out stock tubes because of how thin they sound, but these do well. When using this with earphones or headphones, this performs quite well with IEMs or anything easy to drive really. I couldn't go past the 9 o'clock position on the volume knob with IEMs, but with higher impedance headphones, this had to be all the way at the 12 o'clock position before getting too loud, and still seemed like my music didn't have as much body as it usually has. Cue the tone controls. Here's where adding a little bit of color can become fun when you're trying to find the sound you like. You can play around with the frequencies from 64Hz to 256Hz, which does give you a good amount of control in the bass and sub-bass regions. Then you can control 1kHz and 4kHz as well, giving you mid-range and higher mid-range control. And then there's a huge jump from 4kHz to 16kHz, which lets you control some of the brilliance or air. I find this a bit odd because I don't think there's too much that even happens at 16 kHz. If they had an 8 to 10 kHz option, I think that would have been far more value to this unit in particular. Now, why do I say that? Well, when it comes from a music aspect, if you look at any instrument that exists acoustically, be it a piano, a guitar, horns, percussion, you name it, most of these usually cap out at about 10 kHz. There's nothing that really exists above that frequency range. At least no instrument can really create that higher frequency than 10 kHz. So, and any frequency that exists above 10 kHz, say, the minute you start talking about 12s and 14 and 16 kHz, this is normally referred to as brilliance or air. These are not sounds that you will get out of an instrument necessarily. Rather, this will be a sound that comes out of sympathetic frequency that bounces off certain walls or certain structures. In the situation that I'm talking about is where a choir or an orchestra is performing in a theater that has been constructed to perform acoustically to enhance that kind of music or that kind of sound that's going on in that specific area. So a lot of the frequencies that are bouncing off tend to be called air, or like I said, brilliance. Tweaking this range, you'll notice more if you're listening to that kind of audio. So if you're listening to, should I say, country music or just just a cappella or anything, 16 kilohertz tweak might feel like it doesn't work at all. It might feel that that knob is dead completely. But the minute you start feeding the T8 with really high-res music, that has a terrific amount of resolution, or it's a very good recording, you can tweak that knob and you can hear the changes in the air. It's a very high frequency. It's not really going to make a difference to should I say S's in sibilants, P's, pops, clicks. It's not really going to influence those high frequencies. It's not going to, 16 is not going to influence the crash of a cymbal. That's still sitting between 8 and 10 kilohertz. It's not really going to feel like it's very active. In fact, this is something that even Vinod had noticed when he first unboxed it and used it. So to sum up, on a build front, this thing I think is very good for the price. In fact, I think there's a standard now across the board for anything within the $100 or $150 price range when it comes to amps or tone controls or whatever you get in this price range when you're trying to get into anything audiophile. I like the fact that the toggle switch works as an off and a selector as well, because I have been using a shit low-key for a few years and I don't like the fact that the power switch is at the back. That is a bit annoying. This is more accessible, especially when it's at the back of your desk. The one thing I really wish that they would have incorporated in this was some sort of a pass-through. Like on the low-key, you can toggle between having the EQ on and EQ off, which would have been a nice thing to have, because sometimes I like to switch between the two to see if I'm headed in the right direction for tuning the sound the way I want to. And another thing that would have been nice if it had a passive pass-through. I do like how they've made the knobs, because they're all knurled, so they're nice and grippy, and there is a good amount of resistance in these potentiometers. So you do get a sort of higher end feeling with this, because you're able to tune into the range you want to exactly, which is a very nice touch. And obviously the guys at Douk Audio have put in a lot of thought into this, which is a nice touch. I've not found whether it's a +3 or a -3 dB control on each knob, but it feels like it could be either a +-3 or a +-6. I'm not too sure about that. I'm leaning more towards it being maybe +-6. But I haven't found any literature on it in particular. If you do know the answer to that, please leave it down in the comments below, because it can help somebody understand this gadget a little better. It's not as well detailed as the shit low-key, because the shit low-key has a +-12 on the outer bands and the inner is a +-6. So you do get more control with the lower frequencies and the high frequencies with the low-key. That 16-band knob bothers me, because I don't really see the relevance in it, especially for hardware like this. I mean, I can see a lot of people needing a 16 kilohertz tweak if you're in a studio and you're tweaking your master files and all that sort of stuff. I don't think it makes sense to tweak 16 kilohertz, because likewise, I think a lot of people will think, okay, I need a 16 kilohertz tweak because I'm older. Let's say I'm past 50 and I want to hear that higher range. My question to you in that case again is, what instrument is producing that frequency? What vocal is producing that frequency? Now, I might be upsetting a lot of people who may just dump a whole lot of negative comments down below. Please feel free. If I'm saying something wrong, I'm open to being corrected. I'm open to learning new things, but this is just my opinion on it. There's no need to take offense. Where I've genuinely enjoyed this product is with its tubes in particular, because it does a terrific job of warming up your music and making things sound more, I don't know, call it romantic. If you like tubes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because I've been listening to the Fozzy Audio TB10D with a whole bunch of music for a little while now, and the moment I sort of plugged this in as a preamp and sent a good source file through this and it played back through my LS50s, I could tell immediately that I did prefer this sound. Tubes do it for me. So I think it's a massive plus point. And the other thing I really like about this is the fact that it is also a headphone and earphone amplifier. It's like the jack of all trades, because it's able to do so many things and do them well. That makes it a very appealing product. All in all, who would I recommend these to? Well, if you want to add tubes to your audio loop, I think this is a terrific way to do it. Even if you don't want to use the tone controls, just the warmth of these tubes. In fact, these tubes in particular, like I mentioned, are terrifically good straight out of the box. They've not been run in, they've not even been used for over 50 hours, so they've not reached their maturity yet, but they still sound pretty good out of the box. It will warm everything up. I will also recommend these to people who want a little headphone amp. If you want to drive your IEMs, because this is terrific with IEMs, and the tube warmth out of IEMs even, it's quite enjoyable to listen to. Then of course, if you want a preamp with a tube stage in them, this is again a terrific thing to own. Now, the only place I have a gripe with this is that 16 kilohertz knob. So if you're okay, maybe not using 16 and you're okay till having a 4 kilohertz band tweak, I'd say this is okay to have. So usually I don't touch the 16 kilohertz, and even the other ranges, I don't plus them, I minus them, because I like to avoid distortion. But all in all, it sounds good. Even if you've got good recordings and you want to keep this on flat and just use it for the other things that it is, it's a very nice product to own, and also at a terrific price. So how much does this go for? Well, at the time of recording this video, the price is $129.99. So you can buy this from the Douk Audio website, and I'll leave the link below. Now, I'm not an affiliate with Douk Audio. This is just a product that I've come across. A good friend of mine wanted me to review this because he found it quite interesting, and I think it's genuinely a very good product. So I will not be making any cut from this if you do decide to buy this. I'm just pointing you in the right direction. But I hope you found this video helpful and informative in some way, and I hope I helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.